All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast. It is yours truly, Grayson, man, alongside the GOAT of all GOATs, David Hood, our senior writer at TigerNet.com. We've got a heck of a weekend in store as we travel to Virginia Tech. It's going to be a lot of fun. David, we got our keys to victory. I know Dabo said that it's time to move on from Louisville, but it feels like we're not ready, at least as a duo, quite yet. So let's talk about it just a little bit. I'm going to give you the floor here to express your grievances, and then we'll get on to how Clemson can secure a victory against the Hokies on Saturday.
All right, so before we completely flush Louisville, I'm going to jiggle the handle on the toilet for just a second. I'm going to jiggle the handle. I think the most frustrating part of watching that game, and we've asked Coach Sweeney what happened on offense with the fact that it looked like Clemson was up by 19 rather than down by 19. And he has offered a few things about the chain crew, the referees not getting the chains down at whatever. There were issues. He knows it. He's not going to call out his coaches. Schematically, defensively, let's talk about this. You and I have talked about it in depth. I've talked to different coaches kind of that I know that have watched it. It appeared that Clemson came out thinking that Louisville was going to throw the football all over the place, playing kind of a really soft defense on the back end. No real blitz packages that I saw. There were some, nothing exotic like we used to see back in the day. No cornerback safety. And look, I've been asked this repeatedly. What happened to the blitz packages? And I don't know if that is a scheme deal or if that's a talent deal. If you don't have talent and you blitz, well, you get burned. It looks like Clemson plays more of an NFL defense at times, which an NFL defense is, let's make the other team drive. We're going to bend and not break and wait for somebody to make a mistake. And that is frustrating to watch in college football. But as part of the flushing process, yes, it looked like Clemson was, we know Louisville's going to throw the football, and then acted shocked when Louisville came out with three wides. Tight end, Barrett Carter was supposed to cover. Tight end played really well. Their center played the game of his life, while Clemson center did not play the game of his life. And they come out and say, oh, look, we've got 18 yards before we get to a second-level guy. We're just going to run it right here. And it just kept working, and there just didn't seem to be any adjustments. I had former players, why don't we put somebody over the center? Why don't we go to 4-3? Why don't we go to three linebackers? Why don't we put 47, that Sammy Brown, out on the field? I don't know. But with that said, Clemson did not stop the run, has not really stopped the run at times this year. We can't ask Wes Goodwin about it because we don't have coordinator availability post-game only a few times during the season now. So we can't ask Wes Goodwin what happened. We can't ask Garrett Riley what happened. So as part of flushing it, that now leads us into our keys of the game.
That's right.
And I bet the first one that you have is probably an important one.
Yeah, it's going to be important. Okay, he's flushed. You hear that? We've flushed it. We have officially, here at the Orange Crush podcast, we have flushed the Louisville result. We're a little late to the party, but hey, better late than never, they say. So for the first key, I think, is going to be really important, especially when you're on the road, and especially for this Clemson defense. They got to find a way to stop the run. Virginia Tech is 20th in the country in rush yards per game. They're sitting at 5.2 yards a carry. So they're moving the ball pretty well on the ground. And I bet on Saturday or Sunday, when those Hokies walked into the film room to get ready to study the Clemson Tigers, they're thinking, how can we expose this team? Still in the top 25, ranked 23rd in the college football playoff inaugural rankings for the 12th team, 23rd. They saw Clemson defense that struggled against Isaac Brown, and Virginia Tech's got a couple quarterbacks and also some backs on the field that can make it done. David, Clemson's got a glaring issue that they need to solve pretty quickly in a pretty hostile environment.
And they're going to have to do it without Cuddy, who is, of course, Demonte Capehart, who is out, as Dabo said it. He is now week to week rather than day to day. So they're going to have to do it without him. Peter Woods, I don't know. I was able to, a couple of weeks ago, kind of tell you that Bryant Wesco, or maybe a week ago, that Bryant Wesco was going to play. I have not heard. I think that it has kind of been a little bit of an iffy thing for Peter Woods playing. So Clemson could be without two really good defensive players. And then they're going to be without the nickel Shelton Lewis. Now, Virginia Tech also kind of hurt a little bit. If you look at their top two rushers, it's Kyron Drones, the quarterback, who has carried it for 323 yards, just 3.7 yards per carry this year. He may be out. It could be Colin Schlee, who's playing at quarterback this week. Bashal Tootin, the running back, who's just 49 yards shy of 1,000. Questionable. Could we get Malachi Thomas? Could we get Jeremiah Coney? Could we see somebody else? Like, I don't know. But Dabo says we're going to prepare for Virginia Tech to do what they do, and that's going to be to run the football.
Yeah, it's an efficient group, David. And it's a team that in many ways, and Sweeney said this on Tuesday, mirrors Louisville, not just in terms of a schematic standpoint, but record-wise, it's a team that's had a lot of close losses. When you look at the Fail Mary 2.0 against Miami, an overtime loss to a Vanderbilt team, that loss doesn't look as bad anymore, given the success that those Commodores have had up there in the SEC. And then one possession loss, to Rutgers in, I think, late September with Greg Schiano's squad there. But this is a Virginia Tech team that's good. It's a team with a pulse. It's a team that Clemson, when you look at the September-October slate, much better competition than what they faced in that point. So they're starting to face a different kind of opponent this year. It's not obviously the Georgias of the world, but still competent football is being played under Brent Pry. And for this Tiger team, I think, David, that's going to be an important thing to stopping the run is fast starts on both sides of the ball. Whether you want to look at that formula where they won 6 straight, it was scoring fast on offense and sort of trying to suck the life out of teams. Because this is going to be a crowd probably looking for blood. Probably watch that Louisville game. Probably say, hey, we still got a top 25 Tiger team coming in. This would be quite the marquee win of the season for this squad. And so you look at it, I think starting quick is a lot of it's going to coincide on that run game for Virginia Tech. But I think you got to take the home crowd out as well with a big start on offense. So I think that's key too there is you got to quiet this crowd down. Enter Sandman. I'm excited to see it for the first time in person. I'm like getting excited just thinking about it, but it should be a lot of fun on that front. But yeah, quieting this crowd, David, it's going to be loud. It's going to be loud.
And how do you stop the run considering Clemson's had a lot of issues? Well, again, nobody has paid me to coach a down of college football in my life. I'm pretty good on video games. I have talked to a lot of people. Look, if it was up to me, Clemson has this year, probably more so in the past, played a true nickel, a defensive back at the nickel spot, instead of what we call the nickel Sam or the nickel strong outside linebacker spot. There is a guy who is on the field every week who did play that nickel Sam spot, who is playing at a high level right now by the name of Wade Woodaz, who is bigger. But, man, we looked last week, and there he was going down the field against Louisville's best receiver covering him. And how about 47, the long, flowing blonde locks out from under the back of the helmet? How about going with a three linebacker look, putting Wade back at kind of that nickel Sam unless it's 3rd and 16, right? Then you move Wade back to the mic, maybe take Sammy off the field. Barrett Carter didn't play great last week. But let's get those 3 cats on the field, put them up in a box, get 7-man box, and dare them to throw the football. How about that? And just shut down the run game. I know that is not what Clemson has done because of the proliferation of the spread and the throwing offenses. But just to give those guys on the defensive line some help, that might be, that might be a key for me.
Yeah, I think that it's all going to have to be a really, and as Sweeney put it, a complementary effort, is that they need to get back to playing that complementary football. A situational football, too, we'll get into that as well. But sure, I would like to see some 47 out there in droves, just bringing some more athleticism in. You've seen sort of how the products looked through the first 7 or 8 games for Clemson. And I think if you're Wes Goodwin, at least on the run defense side of things, you need to probably switch some things up. And I know you and I both said we're not being paid to call the plays down on the field. We're just here to chat about it. But That's probably how you and I see it on playing out on Saturday afternoon. David, something that really caught my eye to sort of transition to another facet that I think it's going to be fascinating is in September and October is the blocking at the wide receiver position and how much that we heard about the buy-in, especially from the younger cats like Wesco and TJ Moore. And rewatching the game on Monday, David, they got bullied. They got pushed around by Louisville's DBs, especially Quincy Riley. He really brought the hurt to Bryant Wesco on screens that Clemson was trying to set up.
As you put it, he stole his lunch money.
He did. He stole the lunch money. It was bad. But looking at that in terms of just things that you're not really paying attention to, because it's not going to show up on the box score that someone won a rep on a block. But it means a lot when you're trying to set up that quick game. You're trying to get some block or some runs outside. It's going to be really important for these receivers. And I asked Brian Wesco about it. He mentioned how much it was an emphasis at practice this week going into this Virginia Tech week. David, it's that fundamental stuff that we see Clemson maybe do sometimes, maybe not do sometimes, that's kept them from being a truly great football team, which is why right now they're maybe sitting at a good B minus grade for the season versus maybe an A, being still in the playoff race.
I go back to Sharon Peak. Sharon Peak is one of the best blocking wide receivers Clemson has ever seen. And I asked him one time, it was a week after he had put a couple of defensive backs on their backs. I mean, literally put them on their backs in the run game. And I said, what makes a great run blocker? What makes a great blocker as a wide receiver? And Sharon kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, you just have to want to. You just have to want to. If you don't want to, you're not going to do it. And I think that kind of comes under maybe lighting a fire under some people and saying, hey, sure, play your technique, do it the right way. But sometimes you just got to go out there and say, you know what, this is a run play. He's going on his back.
Yeah, you got to go out there and want it. It's sort of that something I wrote about Troy Stellato, that junkyard dog mentality of just wanting to go bruise a guy or two. And Sweeney put it very well. I think I asked him in early October maybe about it. And he said that the best wide receivers find a way to have an impact without catching the football. And I think that obviously Sweeney having his wide receiver coach roots, that means a lot to him to see out there on the field. And that buy-in is going to be crucial down the road. These are the little things that separate Clemson from being potentially 8-4 at the end of the year versus maybe 10 wins when you look at the end of the regular season. So there's a lot that Clemson can do within the X's and O's of this that can make them so much better. And I think Clemson fans have probably discovered that. And when the team's not as talented as the Trevor Lawrences, the Deshaun Watsons, where they're just kicking tail left, right, center, whichever direction you want to put it, you got to win it in the little margins. And Clemson has done it at times, and at other instances they haven't. So I think it's fair to expect that from Clemson based on their history, but we'll see. Another one, David, another key here is the drive finishing. This weekend has to be something that Clemson's got to look for, whether it's not getting driven to the ground on field goal block or finishing in the red zone. And this is a Virginia Tech team that is 6th in the country in red zone defense, David. It's a pretty good group that Clemson's going to have to face. It feels like all of Clemson's flaws are going to be put to the test this weekend.
Well, finishing drives comes down to a couple things. And, it goes back to that mindset, that want to. And then I go back to, Jake Brenningstool probably would be a great red zone target. He's had some drops, not necessarily in the red zone. A couple of weeks ago, he had a great tough catch down on the goal line. And, I keep thinking, boy, this is it. You're going to pull him through. And then, last week, some of the drops were back. Olsen, Pat Henry maybe is going to play a little bit of a bigger part. I like him. He's a bigger body down there. Of course, Phil Maffa has been Phil Maffa. He's been fantastic. I got tickled at him. I guess it was Tuesday. He came in for interviews and he played 98 snaps, carried the ball, 31 times, 170 yards. What an effort by Phil Maffa. And somebody said, are you sore? And he's like, nah, I woke up tired Sunday, but I'm good now. Like, whatever. Young people, right? Young in shape people. But it's just got to be that mindset. And, getting that tight end more involved down inside the red zone. Some of those holes get tighter. And that's where Wesco Moore, I think, can play a part too. Just simply because they're, especially Moore, he's physical. He can gain separation. Love Antonio. Antonio, maybe not the most physical guy in the red zone. So for this team, with the jingling keys and the Enter Sandman and turkey legs up in the stands and so much fun, and by the time this game ends, it's probably going to be dark, so the lights are going to start taking effect. They've got to have a little bit more of a want-to mindset than Virginia Tech.
Absolutely, and it's going to come down to that what this week has been like for this team. And they've told us on many times something also about Maffa that he mentioned on that question is he said that, yeah, I took a nap on Monday and I feel refreshed. I was like, I would, if I did that on Saturday night, David, I think I'd need more than a nap. I'd have to go into a coma for 36 hours just to feel like myself again. It's impressive to see what some of these kids are able to do.
I wouldn't walk
weekly
for a
basis.
month. I'd be like, can you bring the golf cart to the door and let me go to the car by the golf cart?
What would we do, man, if you couldn't walk for a month? That'd be, oh my goodness. I wouldn't be able to walk for a month if I get hit by some of these guys, but that's a story for another day.
But that whole thing about finishing drives is something we talked about earlier. And I know we've already flushed it, but maybe there's something still hanging around and we got to do a second flush. Is offensive rhythm.
That's right.
There was no rhythm. There was just none. Cade's looking at the sidelines. He's got the helmet on, I know, but he's looking over there, and it's like, and 22 seconds are off the clock, and 23, and 24. This team has always just operated better when they go fast, and there was just no going fast. I love the old-time quote that Chad Morris and I talked about way back when. Fatigue makes cowards of us all. And when you get to going fast and you get that defense with their hands on their hips, I go back to 2016, man. Everybody, that national championship game against Alabama, everybody in that press box, except for some of us who cover Clemson, were like, oh, man, this is Alabama's greatest team ever, and they're going to win by 9-2. And you look over at the play sheet, and Clemson's got 51, 52 plays. And you knew that Alabama didn't have depth on defense. And all of a sudden, midway through the third quarter, you saw those Alabama guys
huffing and
puffing, hands on their hips. Fatigue. Louisville had to play 101 snaps on defense the other night, but it wasn't fast. It's just because Louisville had quick drives. The Clemson kept having to grind it out. Go fast. Go fast. Be Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, you last. Go fast.
Well, we saw it in the first quarter. It was Clemson's counter to Louisville's field goal where they moved. I think it was about a 10-play drive where it was in rhythm. It was in sync. This offense has moved the best. And I think it mirrors the quarterback in a way, too, as Cade is very much a tempo, rhythmic quarterback. And when that music is feeling it, man, it feels like the offense is like when you got a playlist in the car. If you get 3 or 4 good songs in a row together, you're just feeling it. You're dancing in the car. You're singing. You could maybe be on American Idol. But when you get that one bad song that you forget you added to the playlist for some reason and it just ruins the mood, that feels like Clemson to me, is that one bad song takes over and you're like, ugh, what am I listening to? And it throws off the vibe, it throws off the energy, and you got to keep skipping until you find those songs again. And so for Clemson, they got to stay on those 3 to 4 good songs here and really try to find a vibe and a rhythm. I'm going to get made fun of in the comments. That was a pretty poor analogy, but it might be all right. But David, something that we should all be focusing on is another big key. It's to stop the run. Circling back, baby.
Stop the freaking run. and it's bad because, I look at it and I hate to say this, and people are like, why can't they set the edge? Are they not coached? Yeah, that's it. They're not coached to set the edge. Clemson has just completely forgotten how to do that. And sometimes it might be talent. There's one defensive end that when he comes in, I know he's going to be 9 yards up the field as soon as the ball snaps. He just gets so far up the field and they just run right by him. And at some point, a player kind of has to take responsibility for gap integrity. And I am worried a little bit. They've got Peyton Page. Trey Williams, I hope, is okay. He got dinged up a little bit last Saturday. They've got those 2 guys. They've got Stephon Green, Champ Thompson. Vic Burley can come in. So they've got bodies. I do worry about defensive end if Peter Woods can't play. Because as we put it the other day, love Armin Mason. His dad, Anthony Mason, 16-year, career in the NBA, the late Anthony Mason. Seems like a great kid. Jaheim Lawson. I just don't think those are guys that play significant snaps on elite football teams.
Yeah, the drop off when you saw Peter Woods come out there, it's evident when you rewatch on the broadcast. They're making a note of it that Louisville just starts dominating the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And for Clemson, it was really interesting, David, on Saturday, as the stadium was clearing, some of the commentary we heard from the fans, especially the one that I think led off your column after the game on Sunday evening, Sunday morning. The time gets scrambled, especially since we moved back an hour. I was freaking out as we were editing the show. But it's going to be interesting. The commentary is very loud. It's a team, or it's a fan base rather, that is really looking for. Once again, it's like the week lead up to App State. What are we going to make of this team entering November? There's still, I want to be sort of this is going to be a breath of positive air, folks, here, because that's just who I am. And so if you want to turn your way or mute or just listen to David retort to this, you can. But there's still 4 games left on the schedule. Clemson can still win 10 games and rebound, and Louisville can be sort of another moment where, yes, it's down, and this is sort of what Clemson is now, but there's an opportunity to respond, and I think everyone could probably use a win in Virginia Tech, a good team in a hostile environment that could be crucial to turning this into an average season to a decent season. There's levels to this. It may not be the playoffs, but 10 wins is 10 wins.
And Louisville fans, I saw somebody on one of their message boards earlier said Clemson hasn't, or Virginia Tech hasn't beaten Clemson since I was 2 years old. A lot of the kids who've been born are 0-6 against Clemson. Do we storm the field if we win? And that just shows you it's still important, to these fans. It's important to Virginia Tech, man. They're fighting. People talk about fighting for bowl eligibility. Now we're getting to the point where you're fighting, are we going to the Holiday Bowl? Or are we going to the Mayo Bowl? Are we going to the Pop-Tarts Bowl? Are we going to Birmingham? Are we going to Shreveport? That's important too, because you'd a whole lot rather go hang out with Shamu at SeaWorld than go hang out with somebody in Shreveport or in and I understand that Shreveport and Birmingham are more SEC bowls, but you get my drift. It's important. It really is. And Clemson is going to have to come out. They're going to have to be prepared. I have heard that practices have gone great. I asked Debo about it last night. He said everybody's been focused, not angry, but just kind of head down, business as usual. And then I go back. I talked to somebody in Clemson's athletic department last night about the ranking. Clemson's 23rd in the college football playoff ranking, top 12, based off of who wins conference championship games and all that, make the playoff. There's still a whole lot of football left to play. And there's a whole lot of chaos that can happen. And while you don't control your own destiny, it still could happen. I can remember sitting in the press box after Clemson lost to Pitt in 2016 and people going, well, that's it. Clemson blew their chance. And then they wound up winning a national championship. That was a better football team. I get it. Much better football team.
Much better.
But it just shows you, and today even more so, it's just chaotic out there. And who can win day to day, week to week? We just don't know.
There's plenty of matchups left on the board. We've seen it already. This is like 2007. We're different. Besides the exception of Oregon, there's so much movement within the top 25. So we'll be seeing a lot more from this college season. It is still going to be a ton of fun to cover. David, do you have any final thoughts before we get ready to head to Virginia tomorrow?
I actually do have one final thought that I would love to share with everybody. And if you've listened to nothing else on the podcast, listen to this part, please. I feel like it's important to say this. Stop the run. Stop the run. I'm just kidding.
So David might have broken some eardrums there if he got really close to his microphone. So on behalf of me, the co-host of this show, I apologize for David potentially scaring somebody at home. But guys, you know who we don't want to scare? We don't want to scare our sponsors. We want to thank them for their attention, their time, for making this podcast possible. Hopefully Herb, Tyler, Lisa, Nason, if they're listening and David just blew out your eardrums, I'm still here, guys. It's okay. We want to thank you for everything that you've done. We want to thank you guys for all the support you gave the show. You gave it some good support on Saturday night after that game. Wow. some heated comments there, but I appreciate it nonetheless. So, guys, thank you as always for tuning in. Stay tuned to David and I's post-game show after Virginia Tech and Clemson, and stay tuned for our predictions very soon. Can't wait, guys. Have fun. Take care.